time worship and our Bible is King James. We are strengthened in the things, we're strengthened in the things, strengthened the things that remain.
Welcome in to Strength of the Things That Remain podcast. We're glad that you're here today, and we trust that you're going to like, share the video today, get the word, help us get the word out. Go over and like our YouTube channel. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify. I'm trying to think where else we're at, all those places, but we appreciate you being on here. Of course, to my right, as always, my little buddy, my everlasting sidekick.
Never mind. I'm not even going to address that.
Todd Prime Time McKeon. Good to have you. And then we got to my left the High Sheriff of Yancey County, North Carolina, and that is Shane Hilliard. Shane's been the sheriff since January, and so working on his first year as sheriff. And we had him. We've been having camp meeting this week, and he's been at every service, and we got to talk to him this afternoon about coming in and doing this podcast with us. We're trying to think of who to get. It's a podcast, it's a subject that needs to be covered. It's something that needs to be talked about because it's, according to statistically, it's pretty rampant in our churches, and that's the issue of pornography. And so me and Todd want to talk about the areas that affects our churches, and then we bring Shane into the conversation about how that it in many cases leads to sexual abuse in different ways, and how all of those worlds kind of coincide and link up there, and it becomes a problem. So we'll just have a conversation about it this morning, this afternoon, wherever it is you're watching, whatever time it is that you're watching this video. I'll start off with a few statistics, then I'll open the floor up, and we'll just kind of just kick around the ideas about the problems that pornography brings, how we can address it, how we stop it, how we start it. I think, like I told you earlier, if you don't ever start, you ain't gonna stop.
Yeah, let me say a couple things before you go that direction. I've been asked the question several times, is it wrong? And well, there's several scriptures. I would think that it would be understandably, people would understand automatically that it is wrong, it's a sin. But the Bible talks, many different scriptures teach against sexual lust, lasciviousness, flee youthful lust, and there's several different verses that, let me just read a couple real quick. 1 Peter chapter number 2 and verse number 11, the Bible said, "Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul." And then in 2 Timothy chapter number 2, verse number 22, "Flee also youthful lust, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace, and them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart." Philippians chapter number 4, verse number 8, the Bible said, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." So it's important what we think on. We understand that. It's important what we put in our mind. It's important what we meditate on. And the Bible clearly says that we're to meditate on things that are pure, that are just, that are holy, that are righteous, that are full of virtue, and we're to flee youthful lust. The Bible talks about one of the works of the flesh is lasciviousness and fornication and adultery. So many scriptures throughout the Word of God teach the principle that pornography is wrong. Now, of course, we know the Bible said in the book of Hebrews that marriage is honorable and a bed undefiled, but adulterers and whoremongers God will judge. And so it is. There is a lot of issues biblically with pornography. It's a sin. I mean, it's wrong. We know that, but it is a big problem in our society. But what we're seeing is It's becoming a big problem in our churches, and it leads to a lot of other things. You know, we talk a lot about, and we've talked in the past about drug addiction and things of that nature, alcohol addiction. But there's the porn addiction. People are addicted to pornography, and I think some statistics you got there probably.
Yeah. So this is some things I looked up today. Over 40 million Americans are regular visitors to pornography sites. There are around 42 million porn websites with a total of around 370 million pages of porn. Listen to this. The porn industry's annual revenue is more than the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball combined. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about how powerful just the NFL
That's
is.
exactly what I was thinking.
But it's more powerful than all three of the Major League Baseball or Major League
Sports
associations. It says 47% of families in the United States report that pornography is a problem in their home. Pornography use increases the marital infidelity rate by more than 300%. 11 is the average age that a child is first exposed to porn, and 94% of children will see porn by the age of 14. 56% of American divorces involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. 68% of church-going men over 50% of pastors view porn on a regular basis. That blows my mind. I hope that statistic's not true, but of young Christian adults 18 to 24 years old, 76% actively search for porn. 59% of pastors said that married men seek their help for porn use. 33% of women aged 25 and under search for porn at least once per month. On and on and on. I mean, that's a bunch of statistics, but I think you get the point. It's a problem.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how big of a problem it is, really, and to think that it's that big of an industry, it's hard to believe. But we are bombarded with it more in this society, and we talked about this earlier because it's so easily accessible. I mean, you've got the World Wide Web in the palm of your hand, and I think that's one of the big issues. We didn't have these when I was in school. We didn't have these. I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't have this when I was a 16, 17-year-old young man.
You know, Sheriff, talk a little bit about how that this crosses the lines. There's a meta-analysis out there that indicates that if you are a regular watcher of porn, you're 22% more likely to commit a sexual offense. You and I have served search warrants together in sex offenders' homes and whatnot. One common denominator is they're all looking at porn.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, I mean, we see that across the board. Most of you sex offenders are addicted to porn. And one thing that I noticed about porn is, so most of your crimes you can tie back to drugs. Someone breaks into your house, they broke into your house because they're trying to get their next fix. Porn is not that way. Most of the sex offenders are not people that are hooked on drugs. They're, like you said, they're church leaders. I mean, it ranges from 16-year-old to the oldest. You know, we see it in all ages, and it's most of the time it's not drug users. It's good, decent, what you would consider good, decent people in the community that's got hooked on that. I've got a quote here from Ted Bundy. Said, "I would keep looking for the most potent, most explicit, most graphic kinds of material until you would reach the point where pornography only goes so far."
Yeah.
And I think this addiction just, it starts out with just a little bit of watching, and it goes on, and then the next thing you know, they're downloading child porn,
Right.
and we're serving a search warrant on your house.
Mm-hmm.
And child porn, and we've dealt with it over the years, but like you just said, nobody starts with child porn.
Right.
It's like marijuana is a gateway drug to other drugs. So is just what we would call, I guess, regular porn is a gateway to more. You got to get more of a fix. It's the dopamine receptors, all that stuff. Just like getting high on drugs, you go for more and more of a fix. And one statistic says that it's like 80% of sex crimes go unsolved. In other words, a lot of them are never reported. It's never reported.
Right, sure.
Wouldn't you agree that it would be it's almost unfathomable across this country how many children are being sexually abused that we know nothing about?
Right. Yeah, it's more prevalent than people realize.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Even the cases that are reported, I had a gentleman tell me one time that he was that's what he investigated was sex crimes, and he said he's so far behind. It's just
Right.
every day he's getting a report every day, and I think it's. I wonder sometimes if people realize how big of an issue it really is in our society.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, and like you said, since smartphones come along, I mean that's totally changed things. Everybody's got access to it, and now what we deal with is we see young people that maybe think just sharing an innocent picture, or well, not an innocent picture, but sharing a picture, that's disseminating child pornography if the person's underage, and they don't realize how much trouble they can get into and destroy their life at just a young age by just sending a picture.
Yeah, I remember seeing a young man, actually an administrator of the juvenile facility, told us about a young man that was underage, was sending some pictures of himself, and the families saw it, pressed charges, and he was serving time for child porn.
Right.
And that I don't think I just wonder sometimes a lot of young people understand that how serious that is.
Yeah, I think a lot of them don't realize how serious that is. And Snapchat, people think, oh, I sent it and it's gone. Well, it's not. We can get it back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Bradley was talking about that earlier.
We actually wrote a search warrant, for one a couple of years ago, and it takes a little bit, but you get them all back. All that stuff is saved somewhere on a server. You're talking about the addiction of it, and we're talking about the phones, and I was just thinking to myself, imagine being addicted to cocaine, and your drug dealer lives in your bedroom. Your drug dealer travels with you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
That's basically, we were talking about when we did that one, the podcast last year on food, overeating. And we said that's the toughest addiction because you have to eat. Food's everywhere. But if you're addicted to pornography, you carry that with you everywhere you get. It's like your dealer's always with you. It's always available.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it because it is just a click away.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times, because again, you got the World Wide Web in the palm of your hand, and everybody just about it has. And I think one of the failures of our generation is we're giving young people these smartphones, and a lot of older people will almost brag about the fact that they don't know how to work them. Right. They don't know how to turn them on. Well, if you're going to let your child have one, you better know how to examine it. You better know how to look through it and make sure that, you can monitor the content. And I know there's ways, I think there's apps, you talked about Covenant Eyes, and there's things like that you can to do, but we better know how to check these phones and look at them if you're going to give them to someone that's underage. But it's not just underage people. I mean, there's adults that have this problem. But that statistic says, there's people in our churches.
We charged a guy several years ago, Salt of the Earth guy, I believe he's Sunday school superintendent, and I knew him, Shane knew him, neither one would have guessed that guy, I mean, there was some indications. I think there was some, family history of abuse, but still, I wouldn't have dreamed it, but he was abusing grandchildren, and it's mind blowing what's going on. But beyond that, we've got to open our eyes that it starts somewhere. All of this starts somewhere. Now, a lot of times abusers are abused in the past, but writing that off, not considering that, a lot of it is started with pornographic websites.
Yeah,
sure.
And it's right under our noses.
You said something one time, and this might be even a different subject, I don't know, but you said something one time about people should be very careful about sharing certain pictures other children and things like that, because there's people actually searching the internet looking.
Oh yeah. Beach season's coming up.
Yeah, talk about that. I mean, you said that one time. I never will forget that.
I mean, it's just, you post a picture of your 15-year-old daughter, on the beach. That's innocent enough. Whatever, she's out. You're
Very
on
little
a beach vacation.
Very little clothes on.
Yeah, bathing suit.
Mm-hmm.
And some weirdo somewhere is they're living for that kind of stuff, And you think about sex trafficking. I studied on that a little bit, and that is probably another podcast. But when you search for statistics on pornography, you get some things about sex trafficking, because all that goes together.
Right.
And these women, I think it's like 55-60% of the women who are stars in these porn videos are actually victims of sex trafficking. Somebody is holding, they may not be holding them against their will. Like, I think we think about sex trafficking as somebody tied up in a basement. But these women are so financially dependent upon these men that are pulling the strings and making them do that they feel like they can't get out from under them. And that's sex trafficking.
Yeah.
But there's guys that are looking, for their next victim, and they may not come kidnap that girl. It may be that they reach out to those young ladies and say, "Hey, we can pay you, 18-year-old, we'll pay you this, we'll pay you that," and then they draw them into a sex trafficking ring. I'm telling you, it happens. It's unbelievable how much that stuff happens.
Absolutely. You've been in law enforcement for how long?
About 21 years.
So, are you? I mean, of course, in 21 years, there's a lot of things changed. But are you seeing this pornography and child porn, things like that? Are you seeing it's gotten progressively worse in 21 years?
Sure. Yeah. When I first started, you never heard about it, but the internet was just,
just new, right?
Just new, and nobody had in their homes then, but now it's very prevalent.
Yeah.
So.
A friend of ours, a common friend of mine and Shane's, years ago went to some kind of a class on learning to catch crimes against children or something like that. And I remember when he came back, he said the instructor had asked, he said, "Hey, somebody throw out the name of a town." And this friend of ours said, "Burnsville, North Carolina." He put it in the computer. He said, "Throw me a thumb drive." Throw you a thumb drive, put that thumb drive in, took it out, and throwed it back to our friend. He said, "There's your 3 cases." Found them just that fast. Were child porn cases. The FBI has files that they track somehow, and they're able to figure that out. That's beyond my pay grade.
So let me get this straight. I never really. We started out talking about porn, and we're on child porn. So a lot of the cases that y'all have looked at, they started out just as a porn addiction.
Sure.
And it turned into child porn.
Yeah.
They didn't just. It was not a pedophile that just began looking at child porn. It was the actual addiction to pornography that progressively got worse.
Right.
That really led to that.
Yep.
And the depravity of the mind. It's it's absolutely mind-boggling to me that someone can even go there.
Right.
But that just goes to show you how powerful sin is, and when someone gets engulfed in that, just how far that they can actually go.
I think you were with us when we served a search warrant one time he was a convicted sex offender, and I forget now what we charged him with, something else. We served a search warrant. And he had tons of images on his computer, but none of them were child porn. They learn eventually how to skirt the system. He had tons of images that he had captured off of, he liked little boys, tons of images that he'd captured off of people's Facebook pages, of their kids, off of Instagram, of kids, underwear commercials, you name it. Mm-hmm. He had it figured out how to skirt and that goes back to this idea of what are you putting out there on social media that these guys are consuming. You don't even know anything about it. It was an eye opener for me, those sorts of things. How do we stop it? I mean, that's really what we got to get down to, right? I mean, can we stop pornography? Of course not. It's an industry that makes more than the NFL, Major League Baseball, and the NBA combined. We're not going to stop it. but how can we address it in our churches?
I think that's where it has to begin, because I mean, if it's overtaking all our churches, then we're losing our influence in the world. So that's got to be something that we face and deal with. I think we talked about this earlier. One thing is accountability. If you have a cell phone device or any device, a laptop, anything that you're able to access the internet, I think that there ought to be some accountability there. And I know there's apps and things. I've often said that, if your wife, she should be able, your wife or your husband, either or, even your children should be able to look at your phone at all times.
Yeah.
They should know your passcodes and all that. Nothing should be private. It should be open. And I think that's a level of accountability when you allow everything to be out in the open and you don't hide anything. Because when someone starts trying to hide something, if I don't want you to look at my phone, then I'm hiding something.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. And, we ought to be open enough to where,
Right.
look at my phone, look at the history and the search engine and things of that nature. What are some, maybe a parent thinks maybe their child might be dabbling in? What are some warning signs?
I mean, I would say, excessive time on the internet and, spending time alone, isolated, locked in their bedroom. But again, that sounds like most teenagers, but I think those are definitely signs. We used to say when computers first started coming around, always have the computer, say, in the living room or somewhere. But now, you
carry in your pocket.
You can't battle that cell phone because everybody's got them. So, having those apps is definitely a good thing.
Covenant Eyes, and we're not on the take from Covenant Eyes. They're not paying us anything, but I've had it on my devices for 10 years, or maybe not that long, 8 years. Every device at my house, all my kids' devices, all my wife's devices, everything has Covenant Eyes. Covenant Eyes is good. The number one thing it does is it won't let you look. It won't let you find porn. It don't matter what you type in. It'll say, this content's blocked. You can't turn it off without calling them. It's not like most apps where you just uninstall it.
That was my question. If I installed that on one of my children's phone, could they just remove it?
All right. Well, now you can remove the app. Okay. You can remove the app on these devices. But like, for instance, say for my daughter and my son, I am what is called their accountability partner. Okay. The instant they uninstall it, I get an email saying they uninstalled it. So I know. All right. And if they've uninstalled it, something's up.
Right.
Not good. So it won't let you look for anything. But the other thing Covenant Eyes does is it scans continually. So like, I pay $15 a month, and I think that's for unlimited devices. And so I put some of the other kids here at the church on my account as well. And every morning I get an email from them.
It's interesting.
From their device, and it'll say, there's no concern. Basically, the email's like, you open it up and it says no concerning mobile background data, blah 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 blah. If there has been images, Snapchat or anything like that are questionable, you get a copy of that. It's kind of blurred out to where you can't, it's not detailed, but it's enough of an image.
So it wouldn't expose you to an image and get you
right. But it's enough of an image that you can go, oh, that ain't good. That's a lot of flesh tone in that picture. So I get an email every morning from all of my people, and then Rachel is my accountability partner, so she gets an email every morning from everything I've done on my phone the day before, or on my laptop, or on my. It'll install anything. It'll desktop, laptop, tablet, cell phone. I think it's a very effective tool. If nothing else, if I'm a teenage kid and I'm in my bedroom at night and I think I'm gonna look at this, and then Dad's gonna get an email, well, I ain't gonna look at it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be in trouble.
And, I wonder sometimes how much maybe an addiction starts. An ad pops up on the phone or something, and somebody clicks on an ad, or even, I mean, you can Google something, and if you ain't careful how you type it, or you search there's no telling what'll come up,
Right.
you know. And if you click on the wrong site, then you know you've been exposed to something. I wonder how many times someone gets exposed by something, not really looking for it. Does that make sense? Not really looking for it, but just it was just there, and then it caught their eye, and they realized how easy it was to
See, when you download Covenant Eyes, you have to install a virtual private network on your phone, and I'm telling you, their filter's good. I've never accidentally come up on anything. And just to show you how that Snapchat feature works. So we had a boy here at the church, and he got a cell phone. I said, you got to put Covenant Eyes on it. Not my family, different, but maybe put Covenant Eyes. Well, he went fishing, and in a tank top. He had a tank top on, and had taken several selfies of himself with fish, and had sent them on Snapchat. Well, the next morning I get all these alerts saying, you know, concerning photographs. But what it was is 25 pictures of him in a tank top with fish, you know. But it was enough skin that the algorithm in the Covenant Eyes had picked it up as saying, this might be, you know.
You know, and I would rather something like that be too strict.
Right, than to let something through.
Yeah.
So that's one area. How about reaching out? Well, that's tough though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how tough is it at church to go to somebody and say, hey, I got a problem? You know, that's tough, but
Yeah.
I swear I think if we could get over some of that and get to the point where we could find people we feel like we could confide in and be accountable one to another, I think iron sharpeneth iron, and
Sure.
that we would be so much better off in life if we could admit our struggles.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it, better when you can talk. And there's two sides of that. We have to be somebody that people can confide in.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody talks to us about a problem they have, we're not going to go out and tell everybody.
Yeah.
And get up. And I understand there's if a 14-year-old comes to you and tells you to get a problem, then you got a decision to make. You got to go to their parents, or I understand things like that.
Oh man, that brings up another. Is a pastor a mandatory reporter?
I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either.
Yeah.
Like school teachers and some of those people in authority are mandatory reporters if they hear, certain things they by law are required.
I know in the prison system they are.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if you hear things. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Shane, and sometimes just would change gears here just a little bit about law enforcement. I know when I was working full time in law enforcement, you almost get to the place where everywhere you go, you're cynical. You think, wow, I know something about it. I remember one time sitting down in a restaurant in Burnsville, and every table around me, I thought, I know something on everybody in this restaurant. You get where you're just like, everybody's working an angle, everybody's got how do you get past that? I mean, you're the sheriff now. How do you get over that?
I mean, it's tough. You get calloused. I mean, it is. But then you see somebody who's, we heard this morning where Rick was talking about the gentleman who's coming to our church. It's been 2 years. So you see somebody like that, and it's amazing how much that helps somebody like me to see that there is people who can change and get off drugs and turn their life around. Right. So it's moments like that really help us, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
that's good.
I think this is an important subject, and I wish that we had more answers. It's just so tough.
I read this verse here a moment ago where the Bible talks about flee youthful lust, and we need to realize that as God's people, we are to abstain. We're to flee. We need to try our best to avoid, to get away from those things that entice our flesh, and not get as close as we can, and see if the flee, to get as far away from it, and if we'll put up boundaries in our life. And flee those things. Stay away from those things. I mean, if you got a problem and you know that you have a problem, then you don't feed that.
Right.
Now I understand there's addiction and people get grabbed up, but that's how that addiction develops, is you feed that.
Right.
You don't.
It's much easier if you just never start.
Yeah, that's right. The Bible talks about resisting temptation, and there's clear principles in the Scripture that teach us how to avoid temptation, how to resist temptation, how to overcome temptation, and have victory over sin. And if we'll learn those principles and put the boundaries in our life, then, hopefully, that can prevent someone from starting, from going down that path.
Sure.
But when they go down that path, there needs to be you need to realize it's possible to get out of it.
Yeah.
It's possible to
I think pastors
escape
need to wake up and realize that they're not pastoring the perfect church where this is not a problem. It's probably, if you're a pastor and you're watching, it's probably happening in your church a lot more than you think. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, when I was always just amazed at things that people had in their homes and things that people were looking at on their
the flesh is wicked.
Yeah.
And it's wicked. And if it's let go, it'll run. It's like water. If it's let go, it'll run to the lowest point.
Yeah.
And every single one of us, our flesh is wicked, and we have a depraved nature, and we have to be careful. And it's capable of doing some wicked things.
Well, you and I were talking yesterday when we were kids. If we wanted to see pornography, we had to find somebody that's dad had a subscription to Playboy or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a work to do it, but it's not that way now.
That's so much easier. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the avenues are so much more open.
Oh yeah.
And so, like I said, we're just scratching the surface here, trying to start the conversation. So a couple things. Pastors, you got to realize it's in your church.
Parents
Parents need to realize it's in their house.
I think it starts there, don't you? I mean,
exactly.
the parents, we need to realize that, number one, it's a possibility.
Right.
And we need to put put parameters around our home. Watch our kids.
Have some sort of plan.
And let me say this too: young people in particular. I preach to a lot of young people down through the years, and the thing I hear from young people, and sometimes we ain't careful, we buy into this. I guess that young people say, "Well, you don't trust me. You don't trust me.
Right.
You don't trust me." Well, that's right. I don't even trust myself. My flesh is wicked, and your flesh is wicked.
Right. And that's one thing about Covenant Eyes. I put it on my own device.
That's good, yeah.
And then when they come back to that is, hey, I don't even trust me. I got it on my device.
Yeah.
Mom's looking at my stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty effective.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to argue that.
Absolutely.
Well,
And we see a lot of teenagers that do it because their dad does it.
yeah.
They think they're not watching, but they know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
As well, so.
Yeah. That's the truth.
Mm.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, let's get our guards up. Let's get our head out of the sand. If you've got a problem with it, if you're addicted to it. I guarantee you, there's people going to see the title of this podcast and tune in because they're addicted and they'd like to stop. Really, they really would like to stop because they see that it's destructive in their life. It's like so many drug users would love to stop.
Oh, sure.
If they could, they'd love to stop. It's just they're so caught up in it. So if you're watching and you're addicted and you got a problem, set up some kind of accountability. Reach out to somebody you trust. Install some of this software on your phone.
I'll say this too, and if you don't stop, there's going to be repercussions.
Yeah.
Whether it be, how many homes have been destroyed because of pornography.
Right.
How many young people. Oh man, I've seen so many young people in juvenile facilities that, that addiction to pornography and things like that drove them to do what they done. We've done talked about that, but they will be. You cannot play with fire and not get burnt. There will be repercussions. So if you have a problem, don't pretend or even fool yourself to think that you can get by with it.
Right.
And it never affects you. It will affect you. It'll affect your home. It's going to affect your church. There's going to be repercussions.
Sure.
And just like any addiction, don't you think, with addiction to pornography, just dealing with it from the physical standpoint, maybe not so much the spiritual side, but they've got to set goals. It's like, like you was talking about this fellow clean for 2 years, you know, and we've talked about with Preacher Keith, we talked about drug addiction, how that some people slide back into it even though they've been clean 4 years.
Oh yeah.
Slide back into it because it still calls them. Don't you think it's probably the same with this addiction?
I would assume it was. I'm gonna ask you a quick question. I don't. You may not have the answer for this, but I had a school resource officer tell me one time that there's apps that hide apps.
Yes, there he is. Yeah.
And so they can get a cover app. I don't know what they call them, or I don't even know really. So the parents need to learn because they can get some kind of app.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you not even know what's on there. I mean, you look at your phone, not even see the apps that's on there.
It's and I remember they gave us a list of like what an extra calculator app.
Right.
I think was one of them, and they told us a couple what it was. But it looks just like a calculator app, and you click on it and you punch in a password, and it opens up another app that it's covering up.
Right.
How about that?
Yeah. And there's several different ones like that, right?
There he is, yes.
And they can have maybe some app that opens up a world of pornography, and they can have that covered up. That's why it's so important. And I would wonder about that Covenant Eyes if they had something like that.
Right.
Would it, detect that?
I would think because the algorithm searches screen images. That's where it would. That's where I would think they would catch
So if they had an app
If
that
they
you didn't know
open it
they
up.
had on their phone
Yeah.
and they opened it up, then
Right.
they would catch it.
It would probably catch that screen image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that may be another podcast, but to find out what those apps are, that cover apps,
Yeah.
Right.
and find out the kind of apps that they're trying to. If you've got an app to cover an app, there's a reason for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, again, if you got a problem, get it. You got to get it under control. Today's your day. You tuned into this podcast for a reason. If you're a parent, get involved today. If you're a pastor, get your head out of the sand. Realize that this is a problem, and let's see if we can't make a difference in our churches and in our homes. It'd be great. All right. Well, it's a good podcast. We'll catch you next time. Be sure and share it. Be sure and go and like our YouTube channel. And until next time, remember to strengthen the things that remain. We'll see you then.